or from here, but the sound sounded all right. So let's go for it. Yeah, so welcome to the Mental Health Check-In. Today is Thursday. So today is my dad's birthday, so I'm not going to say happy birthday. And I wanted to talk about how it could have been better. And so my inspiration for this was I was rewatching A Better Normal. That's the show I do for my day job at ACEs Connection, where we are envisioning a trauma-informed society together. And I was rewatching the interview I did with my friend Nick, who's in the band Proxima Parada here in San Luis Obispo, and which I loved. It was healing music through trauma, and we got to talk about how some of his songs have some very transformative and healing and trauma-informed lyrics. So we were talking about one of his songs about having to be perfect in a household with some substance misuse, a parent with substance misuse disorder. And I'm trying to find, and Nick said, and on my Facebook, if you scroll down a few posts, you'll see the interview that I did. It was from August 14th, and it's really wonderful. I highly recommend watching it. He said, I would tell myself stories like, oh, it could be worse. I know my dad had it way worse than me. I would tell myself these stories that helped me at the time, but then later in therapy, which I love that he mentioned therapy and is normalizing therapy for everyone. Thank you. And later in therapy, I had to realize, oh, I actually have to give myself permission to feel the things that I never allowed myself to as a kid because I wanted to be strong. Because if I was strong, if I wouldn't cry, then I wouldn't be causing any trouble for anybody. And Sissy, who was co-hosting with me, my coworker, said, it could be worse, but depending on how you grew up, if you have a lot of ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, we rarely are like, it could have been better. And he agreed and said, you never think that. And that line really struck me about, we never say it could have been better. And the reason is that it's really hard, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago too, so some of you may remember if you tune in for that one. It's really impossible. I was actually freaking impossible to know something that you don't know exists. So whatever it is that we got in our childhood, that's what we think the most is. That's what we think normal is. Unless you're going over to a friend's house and really noticing them doing something better, and you're have this awareness to be like, oh wow, this home is more functional than mine. This one's better, which I understand can happen, especially if there's some really, really blatant trauma happening at home, like really blatant abuse or violence. Then it could be easy to go, this is shit and I want something else. But if it's kind of subtle at home, I really about growing up in a home with a lot of, I might touch on it today. But if you just grow up in a home with just some subtle contempt for life, can you hear my washing machine? It's really, woo. Just some subtle, people aren't really grateful to be here. There's stress in the household. Parents aren't getting along, bills are maybe getting paid, but maybe it's kind of stressful. Or things are kind of moving along as usual, but it's a little bit cold. It's not like waking up with all this joy and gratitude. That's the kind of subtle trauma that I am wanting us all to wake up about, because that's the subtle, everyday stuff that gets us really stuck in our lives, but is hard to see. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about when it's we rarely say it could have been better, is that we often will go, well, my parents didn't beat me. Well, my parents didn't, well, at least my sexual abuse wasn't that bad. I have literally said that before. Well, my parents were struggling and at least they didn't, I don't know, fill in the blank, right? That's kind of what Nick is talking about. At least they didn't do this. And it's so easy for those of us who grew up with adverse childhood experiences to have compassion, because that compassion was what got us through our childhood. And it was such a huge tool for us, and which is really wonderful, right? Super grateful for all the wonderful things that got me through. And our brain lies anything to help us kind of survive our childhood. But then oh my God, my washing machine. It's like really like rattling. Oh, well. And so, okay, focus. Can you all hear that, or it's just me, huh? And the problem is that later in life, when we have all these adaptations to dysfunctional families that are no longer serving us, but we have thought that they were normal. So, for example, one of mine is, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month or something, or week or something, day. I don't know. There's all these days and months and weeks coming up or right now. And so one thing that I'm usually pretty honest about is that I have struggled with major depressive disorder. Okay. And so when someone tells you major depressive disorder, the kinds of things that you need to be aware of is that one of the symptoms of major depressive disorder is suicidal ideation. Okay. So I think that we do not do a very good job about talking about mental illness in our society. And so when people say things like, oh, I'm depressed, is that, for those of us with major depressive disorder, like this can be a life-threatening illness. And so I need the conversation to be a little broader and more specific in terms of what does it mean when someone shares that with you. It could mean suicidal ideation. So I do want us to start connecting those dots in terms of like what our mental illness is, what do they look like, and when someone has these symptoms, can they get the very specific and needed treatment that they need? So I'm just throwing that out there. If you are someone who's struggling with thoughts of, why am I even here? I don't even want to be doing this. Or even like, it could be nice to jump off that tall building. I wonder how long it would take to drown. These kinds of things, like if you have them, I just want you to know, like, you could be suffering from major depressive disorder, and there are clinically proven and effective treatments to where that does not have to be your reality anymore. But if you keep normalizing that, you can't get the treatment that you need. So the first thing is to be aware, oh, that's a symptom of major depressive disorder, and then go get a therapist. I did a guide to that a few weeks ago. Go get a psychiatrist, get on the meds you need. Just throwing that out there. There's no shame there, and the treatment is there. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, I grew up having some of those dark thoughts because the emotional pretty barren. There just wasn't a lot of talk about feelings. There just wasn't a lot of talk about joy. There wasn't a lot of talk about like gratitude per se. It wasn't like 100% absent, but it just wasn't as full. It wasn't a full, emotionally rich and nurturing experience. And so there was like food on the table, clothing. We definitely felt like our parents loved us, right? But it's these subtle little things that I'm trying to bring your awareness about that we don't know to ask. Yeah, but what could be better, right? And so what could be better would be waking up in the morning and our parents are like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to start the day. I'm so grateful for this day. I'm so glad you're here. And I made you some toast. Come get your toast. Would you like some orange juice? Here's your backpack. School's going to be awesome today. I'm so excited for you to learn. School was like literally never awesome, by the way. Like school was like, there was always going to be a bully, or there was always going to be a punishment, or I wasn't going to have my homework quite done, or someone was going to try to compare their grade with me. So that's like a whole other thing, right? So then getting to school would have been like, we're talking about how childhood could have been better. We get to school and it's not competitive, and our teachers are celebrating us, and we have small classroom sizes, and we learn, but it's also fun, and maybe we don't have to sit down all day. Maybe lessons are more creative. Food is healthy. After school, we have some sort of caregiver, maybe our extended family, maybe our parents, because parents are not having to both work freaking all the time like mine did. And so as school gets out and you feel like someone is really excited to see you after school instead of feeling overworked and overburdened. So do you see how there's this whole society that we could have that celebrates families and children? It's not the one that I grew up in, and it's probably not the one you grew up in either. I know a lot of you may have enjoyed parents that were able to be like stay-at-home parents, but that just wasn't the kind of household I grew up in. Or maybe you did have a stay-at-home parent, but they weren't really excited that you existed. So there's all sorts of different ways in which our whole society creates stressed out households in which we have forgotten to ask, but couldn't it be better? Couldn't childhood, couldn't life, couldn't the way that children are growing up and being raised and seeing how we identify with existence, couldn't it be better? And so these are the important questions to ask, because this is how now my washing machine is done. It does this little song. I guess if I'm asking how could it be better, then maybe I just really enjoy the little song that my washing machine plays at the end instead of being mad that it makes so much noise. And I can be grateful that there's this magical machine that magically makes all my clothes clean. But when we start asking ourselves what could have been better, and how can I create the systems that support joy and support gratitude in families, and support nurturance, that's where we get to do the real work of creating the society that we want. And so the problems are systemic, and I really have tried to drive that home, right? Especially the mental health check-in that I did that has like 1,100 views now, about my mom asking me what I wish she would have done differently when I was a kid. And I just told her, we're so used to blaming our parents, do this, and the problems are systemic, and it's misplaced anger. I don't want to spend my whole life mad at my parents when I could be out there changing policies so that there's better paid time off for new parents, right? So we need to start collectively thinking about how it could be better for families in the United States, or you may be joining from another country. I think we're particularly bad here in the US in terms of not supporting families. We have deep roots of dehumanization in the United States, very deep roots. We enslaved other human beings. We had genocide against the Native Americans here. And then we put in place this system of capitalism that basically just says like your productive output is your worth and your value. And every system in the United States supports these key values, okay? And they don't support families, and they don't support is valuable and in awe, and that we can wake up with joy, and that don't support that. I won't even really get into gender equity and how that creates a lot of home environments with moms, with all sorts of things. There's just a lot of, if we're working to change societal level issues, and we're working for, men should also get paid as much as women. This is types of things that are working for equity and justice and supporting families and equity for everyone. This is going to create the kind of like loving and supporting, like from the ground up society that we need in order to have a better childhood, which is the goal. And I spent a lot of time talking about childhood because this is literally where our brain molded, right? And so from 0 to 18, we live at home. We're just absorbing. We're sponges. We're just absorbing. So however our parents are to us, or whatever we learn at school, we're just taking it all in. And then adulthood is about unlearning what we learned and going, what do I want to take? What do I want to leave? And hopefully we can unlearn a little bit together. Let me know what you've been working on unlearning. You can leave a comment. You can send me a personal message. What have you been working on lately? I would love to hear. And yeah, I'm just getting back into, I hope this one recorded correctly with the sound. I did one a couple weeks ago. The sound didn't work and I started to wallow in despair, but luckily I didn't let that last too long. And so I'll be planning some good content here in the coming weeks. And yeah, let's start asking how we can create together a society and how we can support each other to create a society that supports families and children, so that as adults, we better mental health. Okay, see you on Monday.